as icons go, this is up there.
Oh, yeah, it is.
This is way up there. This is one of those cars that everybody goes, oh, I want one of those, even if they've never, ever driven it.
That's true. It's an 02 Acura NSX. It's kind of the one you want. I mean, it is the one you want. You're right. Everyone just says, you have an NSX.
Yeah, first gen
You must be
NSXs.
living the high life.
For sure, yeah.
What a great car. Now, we've driven the NSX before. We drove, a 95 and a 96, I think?
Yes, I believe we did, yep.
One of them was yellow, but we never drove the car with the headlights.
Yep.
The non-pop-up headlights.
The last refresh, which is this. The year 2002 was the last refresh when they went the HIDs, lost the pop-ups, did some other minor changes, like this has bigger wheels in the front. They were 16s up until 2002, then these become 17s.
Upgraded to the 17s. Amazing.
Great cars, great roads, and all the reasons we love to drive. Road trips, comparisons, test drives, and podcasts. This is Everyday Driver.
This is a 3.2 liter V6, 290 horsepower, 224 pound-feet of torque, and it's got an 8,000 RPM redline.
Very satisfying, isn't it?
It's amazing. Like, what other engine on the market today, short of some very expensive cars,
True.
has an engine like this with titanium connecting rods and aluminum construction and pretty much all the stuff that makes car nerds salivate?
Yes, you're right.
This
you're
is
totally
that
right.
car.
Yep.
And guess what? They've gone up in price. They
Oh
are
my
no
gosh.
longer 30 grand. They're not 50. Good ones are not 70. They're close to 100 now. But the problem is, I don't feel like this is a $100,000 driving experience. So that means the NSX has now done the Porsche 911 thing, which is absurd valuation for a car that doesn't really drive like an absurd valuation. It's good. I like it. We all like it. Everybody likes this car a lot.
When I'm over there, I'll be liking it as well. Yes.
It's great.
Yeah, for sure.
But is it $100,000 worth of great? At this point in time, that's a tough one. I mean, I like it.
When these were 50 grand, we all should have bought them. Okay?
Yes,
and now
why didn't we?
Here we are post-COVID. This is one of those cars that spiked during COVID with everything else, but then has stayed high.
Yeah.
The bad ones are 70. Okay? The one you don't want is 70 grand.
Gosh.
And here's what's crazy. The ones you do want, unique color, late model year. I found an 05 in a cool color on Auto Tempest. They wanted $249,000 for it, and the answer there is no. That's just no. I'm sorry. Now, it doesn't mean they'll get that, but they're asking $250,000 for it, and I'm sorry, but no.
There's other cars on Autotempest.com. You can find all the dealer inventory, but you can go looking for NSXs of all the model years.
Yes, you can.
You can get very specific. You can even find the automatics on there, which had less horsepower and torque, and they weren't the ideal ones, but maybe that's how we save money. We go get the automatics, but then we won't like them nearly as much, right?
We won't like them nearly as much, but at least we had an NSX. I mean, there is a lot going on here that is so fine-tuned. This is one of those cars that reminds me of the current Civic Type R, where it feels like a blank check project, where they worried about everything, and they worried less about what it was going to cost them. Just how do we make it the best? That car just feels that way. And anyone I've ever driven, they feel that way.
So I read about the steering ratio on this car, because everybody who gets in thinks, it's got that kind of distant feel, even though it does feel natural, and we are at that time period when Honda was exploring electric power steering, right?
Yep.
But the ratio is 18.6 to 1.
Slow.
It's slow. But how did they make corners feel nimble? Well, it's because the car is so light, not quite 3,200 pounds, and the IP just drops away. So not only does it look light to your eye, it feels light.
You're right. Yep.
There is no car that makes you feel like this. I mean, maybe your 300Z kind of had this low IP.
They actually have a surprisingly similar
feel.
basic shapes, even though I like this one even more than the 300.
This is really cool. You just get in, you can see, because of the design, the design team actually looked at F-16 cockpits and looked at the visibility, 360 degrees, and it has the best visibility still of any car.
Amazing. It really is amazing how
brilliant.
well you can see out of this.
Fishbowl.
And how much you don't feel restricted by the car at all. But what's amazing is, in spite of that, this isn't a car I feel like I'm sitting on top of.
No, yeah, still
I
you're
want more
down
room,
in.
but I still
Yeah.
feel like it surrounds me enough, which is an amazing combination when you consider how much glass is here. Most modern
Yep.
sports cars have less glass than this, which is amazing to think about.
Amazing. All right, so this is peak Honda. It's not peak Honda just because of the powertrain and the engine and how good this car is, but it's because of all the switchgear. Single-use buttons, they just do one thing.
Phenomenal.
But instrumentation that's just so simple and clean, and that's why it connects to Accords. Everybody said you can just drive it like an Accord or some sedan, and you're good, and then you can really rip it to 8,000 RPM. But all the switchgear, everything in here, yes, it does feel supercar because of the proportions, because of this waterfall IP, but the switchgear tells you, and most of all, the steering wheel tells you that this is a normal car. Remember steering wheels back to the normal times when they weren't so thick, and it was just, this steering wheel could go right into an Acura sedan.
It could. You're right. Yeah.
It could be right out of any sedan from the 90s, and it would look normal. But here it is, kind of bringing this down to feeling normal. It doesn't look quite so exotic as normal, new steering wheels do. But everything in here, the switchgear, you just look at it and it just feels like home, like normal.
It's all easy to know how to work with. I love the multiple layers of things behind the steering wheel. It's so easy to work with. It does have the same font on the gauges as any Honda of that time.
Totally.
You buy a Civic, buy an
Totally.
Accord, you're looking at the same kind of gauges, font-wise, style-wise, but yet you're in a much more interesting car. I do think that every one of these buttons, this is pre-haptic times, so every one of these buttons has a movement to it. And again, this is back to me talking about it feels blank check. It feels like they stressed about how each of them felt.
Yes.
And that
They
sounds
worried
so
about that.
weird, but like
Yes.
the way the actual buttons and knobs feel, it's like, oh, that's very pleasing. And you don't think about it until we've jumped so far past that. At the time, you wouldn't have even noticed.
Yeah, true.
But now that we're so far past that into touch screens and haptic stuff, when you press a button that's been thought about, it's like, ooh, that feels nice. And that's ridiculous to say, but it's very true here.
I mean, you could look around and think, oh, this is kind of a futuristic tape deck.
Yeah, you're right. Tape deck and a CD player. Woo!
Futuristic interior, tape deck, right? That kind of changes things right there.
Acura held on to tape decks till almost 2010 in their cars. They had tape decks forever.
So
and
funny.
this is the late model NSX with the tape deck front and center. There it is, folks.
Crazy. Now, the exterior, it has really stood the test of time.
Yes.
It has the C8 Corvette thing going on. By that I mean the amount of real estate behind the rear wheels to
Yes.
make a trunk made this car useful, but that was what the C8 Corvette did too. They actually made it so it could be used. It's got a trunk. It's got usable space in this car, which makes the proportions a little bit ungainly. Think, what if this were a little bit shorter? Because you look at this from
Sure.
certain
Yeah,
angles
yeah.
and you think, all right, the rear is a little bit long, but okay, it mostly works. And what if this were even more compact? I think that'd be cool, but we got to fit stuff, people and luggage and things, and they
has
still packaged a lot.
A surprising amount of space in the trunk. You could get 2 overhead roller bags laying down side by side in the trunk, and I mean the ones that people shouldn't bring on as carry-ons. Those would fit back there. It's very impressive, and it does make that back look very long, but then you open up the trunk and you just go, yeah, I could road trip. Like, I want to take one of these cross country. They would totally work. It would be great.
Okay, last thing about the interior. And that is the space for 2 people that are 6'3" tall. I have leaned the seat back, and my torso is shorter, so I'm doing okay. But you're probably not going to have a whole
I'm
lot
not
of fun
doing
over
okay.
here.
And I won't be doing okay over there, and I will
No.
talk about
I
it when
mean,
I land there,
the seat has squished down, so I'm almost there, but if I move my head the wrong way, I'm hitting. But for the most part, I can kind of get by. You're not going to be able to get by.
I have to drive with my head canted. I have, even over here on the passenger side, I have to pick where I want my neck to be.
All right.
And then I hate it later. But anyway,
Just get ready.
we have to swap.
All right.
Okay, so I do have to talk about it. I'm 6'3" with a long torso. I have a longer torso than he does.
There's less room over here.
Yeah, So my options are these. I can't go there's no adjustment lower on the seat, so I can either lean further back, but if I do, then I hit my head on the cross beam here for the target top. So I got to come some forward. Then, the other thing, by the way, about being all the way back.
This is not good over here.
Is
This
that
is worse.
now my arms are completely straight,
Uh-huh.
and you can't move the steering wheel closer. So I have to come up. But when I come up, now the problem is I can't actually sit straight. So I have to kind of sit like this to drive. Now, I don't know what this lean is here, but I like driving this car. But this is my body position. Helmet, forget it.
Oh, yeah.
Which is too bad. But okay, that's just the reality of my size. It might not be yours. Obviously, that's my issue, but that is a genuine problem.
This is a cool car. Look how low this is. My head really hurts now because
Yeah.
This is different. I feel like I'm in the TLX. Why does Acura keep making the passenger seat different than the driver's seat?
It's bizarre, isn't it?
And you notice the switch? It's just one.
Huh?
One
Just
switch
to
per.
do one direction. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Makes
you can't go
sense.
down. This is not good.
I mean, not made for people our size is actually too bad. Now, the first NSX we ever drove was owned by a guy that was 6'5",
That's right.
and he actually did tall man mods to this seat, and it was perfect. I fit without touching anything, and it was wonderful. So I would like to know what those are, and then I'd like these to come back down to 50 grand, and then I would buy one. I'd buy one at 50 grand and put tall man mods in it. At 100 grand, and I can't fit.
Gosh.
That's a problem. Now,
This is crazy.
let's talk about gearbox. I'm going to go out there and say it.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about the S2000 gearbox is the ultimate gearbox. You must drive an S2000. S2000 is the best. Nope, this one beats it.
Agreed.
I prefer this one.
This is
is
so
the
good.
best 6-speed ever.
Yeah.
And I really think
Yeah.
if you haven't ever driven a really superb 6-speed and you're kind of going, I don't get it. I don't know what's going on here.
Exactly.
This is the one that will bring you around. It's also very easy. Besides the fact that it feels good, everything's light but mechanical.
The
It's just
spacing
simple to work
between
with. Tiny
gears.
spacing.
It's so great.
I'm very, very impressed
Why
with
don't
the
we just
gearbox.
keep doing this? Why
Yes.
don't we go away from this?
Well, yes.
thinking?
Just this idea in everything. Be perfect.
Yes.
Now, the steering has very little feel. It has weight at the hub, and that's something that we've recognized in a lot of modern electronic steering racks, is that there is weight created artificially at the hub. The resistance I'm feeling when I go into a corner has nothing to do with anything forward of my knees. The resistance is entirely here at my wrists, and that is weird. The nice thing is, though, this car gives so much information otherwise that you forget about that.
Yeah.
It is something that I worry about. Steering feel is a thing for me, but you forget that you aren't getting information there because you're getting so much everywhere else.
True.
The car feels light and airy, these thin A-pillars, this great visibility, all the things you already mentioned, all of that lends to this car feeling incredibly light and just playful, which I really like about it. I would love to have one of these and drive it cross country. I need them to be half their current cost. And that brings up the other issue, and that is you and I going on and on about how great it is not going to bring the prices down. Yeah, that's not a thing that's going to happen. It's too bad. And it's not like the late models are the ones that are worth money. I'm talking like the 91s, or some of those are going for 100 grand. If you take care of it. Now, we are far enough out from the creation of this car that it is getting more difficult to find parts. It is getting more difficult to just deal with stuff that wore out. It's just a reality of how old this car is. Again, this one is a 2002, and it's one of the newer ones out there. That's what's crazy.
Yeah, crazy.
I get to pass this guy in pure VTEC. I'm not even to 5,000 RPM yet.
VTEC F1 mode coming up. Listen to that.
Now, that just under 300 horsepower, candidly, is not astounding. It's pleasing, it's nice, but it's funny to think about the NSX, which was a supercar in its time, as a momentum car. This is still a momentum car.
That's
like a
good point.
Miata, like an Elise, this is not a car that you're going to wow yourself because you put your foot to the floor. It's a car where once you gained that speed, you can really hang on to it. There are also a lot of people, our friend and racer Billy Johnson is one of them, that have taken these cars and refined them further to make them into track monsters. And changed, even refining the current handling even more than this one. I mean, but right out of the box, these are so good. And I wish I fit better. I wish they were cheaper. Those are the big downsides to this. But if you have the opportunity to have an NSX, just drive. You should just drive one. But owning one, they are special enough to keep up with their iconic status. So often stuff isn't up to the reputation, and this, it definitely is.
I was thinking about tuning these things. A lot of people have tuned these to the point where they start to become unreliable, but the goodness of this is that it's a Honda.
Yes.
I say leave it stock, enjoy it for what it is. Don't think, I gotta extract 800 horsepower out of this thing, because it'll last you a long time if you don't.
Totally.
Then it'll be a pretty unstressed engine. You still get to enjoy an 8,000 RPM redline. But no, it doesn't have all the power in the world, but I say enjoy it for the time period that it existed in, and it's still fun.
Well, that's the key thing, is that not only is it the peak of its time, because this is the car that put Ferrari on notice. Not only is the peak of its era, you drive it now and it holds up.
Yeah.
As genuinely fun. You know it's not latest. Who cares? It's genuinely fun, and that's what we're pursuing here, and it is achieved like crazy with the NSX.
But they have a tape deck. It's tape deck.
It's really the tape deck. It is the reason to get the Acura NSX.
I think it's cool.
You know, all those tapes that are rotting away in your closet, all the tapes people are selling on eBay, solved by the NSX. I mean, you're $100,000 away from a tape player. That's really, this is our consumer advice for the day.
Everybody threw away their VHS cassettes.
Yes.
Throw those away.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you still have cassettes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have an NSX, good news.
Luckily, you can just buy an NSX for a good tape deck. It's got Bose on it and everything.
Yeah, solved. Sweet.